Okay, we're live. All right. Okay, I think we can start in a while. Right now we have. All right, we'll wait a few more minutes. Oh, hi. Okay, yeah. So hi, I am a new and I watched your last week, but I did not finish watching it. All right, yeah, no problem. Because what we're actually gonna do today is we're gonna spend the first 10 minutes of class reviewing what we did last time. So if you didn't finish watching last time, that's fine. Yeah, so I'm just going to be re-explaining some parts of it before we move on to new material, and then after this lesson, you can continue watching the previous live stream. So I'm just going to wait a bit longer until around 5:05 before I start teaching. Okay, all right, sounds good. All right, so yeah, a couple more minutes and then we'll begin. it's almost 5, so at 5 will officially, 5, yeah, 5:05 will officially start, because I know some people may be a bit late. Oh, hi Angela, how are you? Hi Bolu. Alright, it seems like we have a couple more people coming in at around 5:05 will officially start. Okay, alright, it's 5 p.m. So I think I'll start in 5 minutes. Yeah, just wait until there's a couple more people. Well, I guess I'll use this time to go over what we did last time, right? So last time what we did was we learned about the import scanner package, right? And so using the scanner object, what we did was we were able to create, we were able to use the scanner object to take in the user input. And using that user input, we could like make our code a lot more interactive, right? And so using that, we were able to make like a little game with it, right? Which I will send you guys the code if you don't have it. But you guys should be able to see it from past live streams, so that shouldn't be an issue. But if you do want the entirety of the code, I can send it to you. Just let me know. Oh, Angela, is there a Google Classroom for this? Sorry, no, there is no Google Classroom. But if you're interested in creating, if a Google Classroom is something you guys would be interested in, I could definitely make that. I could definitely do that. Just let me know, and like I'll be able to do that. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just go through the last code and then show you guys it. Just so we can make a quick review and retain all the information we went over last time. Okay, so essentially the main things we went over was this line right here, the import keyword, which basically allows you to import this package. And it's really good, and it's important to import packages, right? Because they come in with pre-built methods and pre-built objects, right? We talked about objects last time a little bit, but today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going over some loops more in depth. We're going to be completing a couple questions with them, and I'm going to go more in depth into the object, because last time we talked about the scanner object, but I don't think you guys have a really deep understanding of the scanner object yet, or objects in general, so we'll go over that right now. So you can see on line 5 that we have this line right here, scanner input equals new scanner system.in, right? And so with an object, you can have different types of objects just like in real life. So in Java, what you could have is, let me just bring up the chat. Yeah, so like in Java, what you have is you can have different types of objects just in real life. For instance, in real life, you could have a paper object, or you could have something like maybe a pencil object, right? And so all these different objects, they have all of these different attributes. So for instance, and so we can measure these attributes, right? For instance, in Java, we could also create a pencil class, right? Because there are different types of pencils. Not all pencils have the same what do you call it, thickness, or basically the same, like some of them are a lot darker than others, or some of them shade a lot lighter, right? And so these different objects have different attributes. For instance, if we created for instance, like a pencil object, the pencil object could have like different stuff related to the object inside of it, right? And so we can create different objects from it, from a class, which I'll get into a bit later. But yeah, that's the main gist of it. In Java, you can create objects to visualize things more, right? I think we use an example in the first class of like a video game object. For instance, a video game object could be a weapon, and then the weapon can have different attributes to it. For instance, like how heavy it is, how powerful it is, right? And so yeah, basically objects can be used to used and altered, right? But we don't know how to use an object yet, and we don't know how to make an object yet. So that's what we're going to learn sooner. Okay, let me check how many people are on right now. Okay, all right. In that case, we have a fair amount of people, so I guess we'll start right now. All right, so today we're going to be learning more about loops. We're going to be completing some questions with them, doing some problem solving skills with them to see how you could use a loop to solve a problem. And then we're also going to be going over the scanner class again, and we're going to be doing something else with it. So yeah, last time we talked about how we can make a scanner object from the scanner class. And so what this line does is that it imports the scanner class and allows us to create a scanner. Right here, we are initializing the scanner, right? Kind of like how we did with an integer when we're creating a data type. For instance, I want to create an int called let's say, big number, right? So it follows the same kind of guidelines as creating an integer or any other kind of data type. At the start, you want to specify what kind of object you're creating. And so if we're creating an integer, then we have to specify that it's an integer with the keyword int. If we're creating a scanner object in this case, then we have to specify that it's a scanner by using the correct name of the object, which is scanner. And then afterwards, it follows the same again, where you put the name of the object you want to have it listed as. For instance, I want this variable to be called 0, right? And that's basically all objects are. They're just like variables, but they represent different things. For instance, this variable input doesn't represent an integer like big number does. It actually represents the scanner, and then the scanner is able to do things that the integer cannot do. Yeah. If you guys have any questions at all throughout, feel free to let me know, okay? Alright, so now that we kind of briefly touched on the review of the scanner class, today what we're going to do is that we're going to go back and then work on introduce you to some new loops. For instance, last time what we did was I introduced to you guys the for loop, right? And the for loop, what it does is that you have to declare it with the for keyword, and then inside you can have these two brackets, right? And inside is where the magic actually happens. You have to specify how the loop works, right? How many times you want it to repeat something. And so it's in a way it's kind of like an if statement where you have a conditional it needs to be met. So I'll show you. So in any single for loop, you have to start by declaring a variable inside of the loop. And so oftentimes we will declare the variable inside the loop as I. And so basically, our whole entire loop revolves around this variable I and what happens to the variable I, right? And so next, after we create our variable, we have to specify what happens to when we want the loop to stop. For instance, if the loop repeats too many times, then we want it to stop at a certain point. So we can say that we want the loop to stop once I is smaller than a certain variable. For instance, let's say we want our I to be smaller than number, and number is taken from the input, right? So it could be whatever we want it to be. And so right here, we're essentially creating the conditional that while the integer I is smaller than the number, the loop will continue to repeat. That means whatever is inside of here will continue to repeat. Okay. And next, after this conditional, what you will have is that you have to have I change, right? Because if I doesn't change, if I remains the same the entire time, then the loop will go on forever, right? And if the loop goes on forever, that's not good, right? Because it's just creating an endless loop. And then you're, for instance, if you wanted, let's use a real world application, right? Say you wanted to wash the dishes, right? Wash the dish, right? You would want to wash a number of dishes, right? But if your loop doesn't specify, or like your loop never ends, then you'll be stuck in a constant state of washing dishes, which, if you're washing dishes for eternity, is not very fun. Which is really important as to why we have to specify this part, basically when the loop will stop. And then equally as important is that what happens to this integer I each iteration of the loop. So in a loop, you could do lots of things to I. You could make you can add 1 to I each time, and how you do that is you basically just say I is equal to I plus 1. You're adding 1 to the variable I every single time the loop goes. Okay, Bobby, I couldn't see or hear you. Can you see or hear me now? Yeah, just let me know if there's any problems at all, okay? Oh, my computer okay, your computer froze. Okay. Alright, so if everyone understands that, that's great. If you don't, please let me know if you have any questions. Or you want me to reiterate, you want me to go faster, you want me to go slower. Okay, please type it in the chat. And that way I can help you guys learn even better. But okay, I don't see any messages right now, so we'll just keep going. Okay, so now we have the standard body for our loop, which is for. We have to always have this keyword for in order to create our loop. And then we have these brackets right here, which specify basically how long the loop goes on for, or like the conditions of the loop. And so the first step in creating a loop is to create a variable inside the loop and specify its value, right? Because the entire loop revolves around this value, which in our case is an integer called I. In another case, you could have it as a different name or even a different data type. But in our case, we're going to use the integer called I, right? And this entire loop is basically determined by, revolves around this variable. And basically, if the variable meets this condition, then the loop will keep going. But if it doesn't, then it will stop. The loop will stop and it will go. And then say I have a system.out.println statement right here. Then it will run this statement and print whatever is in here. See, it'll print this. But if the condition is, if I is always smaller than number in our case, right? If I is always smaller than number, then it will never go here because it will create a never-ending loop, right? And then the other part of the loop is then specifying what happens to the variable every single time the loop runs, okay? So I'm going to show you guys an example of a loop. if you wanted to print out the numbers from 0 to whatever number you wanted, right? So say we want to print out the numbers from 0 to 10, then we would do it like this. Because we start at 0, right? We start out with our integer I at 0, and then while I is smaller than or equal to 10, we make I turn into I plus 1, which basically means add in 1 to I every single time. So in the first iteration of the loop, it's at 0. Then it looks over here and checks if I is smaller than or equal to 10. And if that is the case, then we'll say, okay, the loop continues, and then I turns into I plus 1. So then it just increments by 1. And so then I'll use system.out.println to actually print out the number. Okay, actually, hold on, let's get rid of this first because we don't need this. Alexander says, are we able to replace I equals I plus 1? Yeah, you can do I plus equal 1, or instead of doing I plus equal 1, you can also just do I plus plus, right? That automatically makes I increment by 1 every time. But yeah, you can also do plus equal 1. That works too. I'm just showing I is equal to I plus 1 just for, you know, the people who aren't familiar with that, because I think at the beginning this is much easier to stand than I plus plus, right? You have no idea what I plus plus means. But yeah, for sure, if you want to use I is plus equal to 1 or I plus plus, you can do so. But I'm just like showing it here for you guys, you know, if anyone, because it's a bit simpler for more people to look at. Okay, but as you can see here, we've printed out all of the numbers from 0 to 10, okay? And now I want you guys to try printing out all the numbers from 1 to 5 by using a for loop, okay? So I want you guys to use the same body as this, right? Copy this down. But inside of here, I want you to change it so that it will print out the numbers from 1 to 5 instead of from 0 to 10, all right? And I'll give everyone a bit of time to do that. And if you are done with that, please type it in the chat. So I'll give you guys a hint, if you want. So, what you can do is that you can start out by defining I as 1. So for instance, if you wanted to print out the numbers all from 2 to 6, you wouldn't want to start at 0, right? Because that wouldn't make any sense. You want to start at the first number you want to print out. So that's a clue for you guys. You want to make the variable equal to the number you want to start out at, and then you want to print out that number, okay? Or that variable. Okay, we have one person done. All right. I'll just wait a little longer to see if everyone else is already done. Yeah, so just type down in the chat if you're done printing out all of the numbers from 1 to 5. So that's the plan, print out all the numbers from 1 to 5. Okay. Alright. Okay, we have some more people done. Alright, it looks like most people are done, so what I'll do is I'll move on. Okay, and so what you should have done if you're not already finished is you should have declared your int I is equal to 1, because that's the number we want to start out printing, right? So we're going to start out at 1, and then we want to print out every number, right? So we're not going to skip by 2, we want to skip by 1. So we tell the loop that we want I to be equal to I plus 1, which basically says that we add 1 to I every single time. And so since we start at 1, then we add 1 again, right? 2, 3, 4, 5. But that doesn't matter, right? That would be useless if we didn't have this. Right, this is very important. If you don't have it, your loop will not run, because you have to have a condition which specifies when your loop will end, and then, yeah, because if your loop doesn't end, then that's a problem. And so in our case, because we want to specify that we want to print out from 1 to 5, what we can do is that we can tell it that we want this loop to run as long as I is smaller than or equal to 5, right? That way it'll print out, start at 1, then it'll go to 2, right? Because 2 is smaller or equal to 5. Then it'll go to 3, because we told it to add 1 each time. Alright, is 3 smaller than 5? Yes, it is. Okay, and it keeps going until it gets to 5, and is 5 equal to 5? That is true. So it'll go. But then once it gets to 6, it'll look at here and it'll say, is 6 smaller than or equal to 5? Well, first of all, 6 does not specify any of those. In fact, 6 is larger. So what happens is that the loop stops and it doesn't print out 6. So I'll show you guys right now. Yeah, as you can see, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so that's good now. Okay, and now I'm going to introduce you guys to another loop, which is called the while loop. So the difference between the while loop and the for loop is that they are essentially made to complete the same thing, which is to specify or like repeat a part of the code a number of times, right? The difference is that the while loop only cares about one thing, and so the while loop is like different from the for loop in the fact that you don't have to specify create a variable. So with the while loop, I can do this. I can do the same problem and complete the same problem with a for loop and while loop, because they're made to do the same thing. It's just that they're written out a bit differently. Essentially, the while loop is supposed to do a loop as long as a condition is met, right? So for instance, while I'll create a variable here, while int count is equal to 0, and while count is smaller or equal to 5, I want to execute what's in here, and so I wanted to execute a print statement. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to show you guys how to print out the numbers from 1 to 5, not using a for loop. Instead, this time I'm going to use a while loop, and you'll see how they have the same principles in place. You have to have a variable, right, or a condition that has to be met in order for the loop to run, right? So then the loop knows when to stop after the condition has not been met, right? And so you'll notice here that I can create this while loop, right? I'll have no problem running. The only thing is that it will continue to run forever. And the reason why is because count is always going to be smaller than or equal to 5, because count is always going to be equal to 1, which means that it'll just print out 1 infinitely, right? And so we don't want that. We want to have a base case, or like we want to make it so that let me close out this. Yeah, but we want to make it so that it will stop at some point. And to do that, we can alter this variable here to make it so that the variable will be at some point will be larger than 5. And we can just basically say count is equal to count plus 1, or count plus 2 or count plus 3. But I'm showing you guys how to print out all the numbers from 1 to 5, so it makes more sense to do that like this. And so I'll run it right now. And so as you can see here, it gives the same result as a for loop. The difference is that it's made with a while loop, but the idea is the exact same. You have to have a variable, right? Or in other words, you have to have a condition. And so our condition is that as well count is smaller than or equal to 5, we want to do something. And what we're going to do is we want to print out count. And then after each iteration of the loop, we want to add 1 to count. Alright, so yeah, so if you guys have any questions, let me know. Hi Aiden, thanks for joining us today. Yeah, okay, if you guys understand this, type it in the chat. If you don't, feel free to ask any questions, okay? But alright, now we went over the 2 basic loops, which are the while loop and the for loop. Now, what we're going to do right now is we're going to create another little game with using this principle of the loop. And what we're going to create is we're going to create a password guesser, okay? And so I'm going to walk through the problem with you guys right now. So you have a password, right? And you want to make and the only way to, okay, so you have a password, right? And so this password is for your computer. But you're at the current stage and you want to make a password guesser, or not a password guesser, but you want to make a password program which will give you access to your computer once you type in the correct password, okay? And so our goal for this is to make it so that when you type in the correct password, it gives you access. But otherwise, we're going to say that otherwise we're going to say that if the password is not correct, then if the password is not correct, tell them the password is not correct. Right? And so that's the basics of a password program. You ask the user for their password, and if the password is not correct, then we have to tell them the password is not correct, right? And the thing in a password program is that you're not going to ask the user for the password once, right? Because if you accidentally type it incorrect on the first time and you don't get in, well then you can't type in it again, right? We want to make it so that no matter how many times you guess it incorrect, you can always do it again. And so the way we can do that is actually by using our for loop. Oh, hi Umer. Right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you time to kind of think, try to attempt this problem yourself, okay? So I want you guys to try to make the password program. So the conditions for the password program are, I'll write them right here. If the password is correct, tell the user it is correct. And so then if not, tell them the password is incorrect. And so what you want to do for this question is use a while loop and some if statements in between there, okay? So I'll give you guys some time to solve that, and once you guys are done, let me know, okay? Oh, okay, Angela, how to use the scanner thing? Yeah, so I'll show you the code for it if you want me to right now. Yeah, so you just have to import the scanner and then basically create the scanner object like this, right? Then specify the name. This could be anything here. So specify the name, and that's how you create the scanner. Alright, so I'll give everybody a little bit more time. Uh, if you're stuck on this, feel free to let me know and I can help you. Yeah, so if you're done the code for the password program, let me know in the chat, okay guys? I'll give everyone 2 more minutes and then afterwards I'll start typing out my solution. Okay, so 1 more minute. Okay, done. Ali's done. Good. Nice. Done. Alright. If anyone does want some more time, just tell me, okay? And I'll give you guys a little bit more time. But if you guys want to see the solution, then I can also type out the solution for you guys and explain it to you. Okay, we have Alexander who's done. Nice. So 3 people are done. Okay, I'll just wait a tiny bit more to see if everyone else is good. Alright, so 4 people. Alright, okay, I'll show you guys how we could go about this problem right now. So as we said before, the general principle of the password program is that we are prompting the user to ask for their input. And when we ask for the input, we're going to store it into a variable called user guess. And then we're going to compare that to the actual password. And so that if the password and the guess of the user line up together, then we tell them that the password is correct. But if it's not correct, then we tell them that it's incorrect. So let's start first by declaring the scanner class or the scanner object so that we can actually take in the input. So right here, we've just created our new scanner, and now we're going to ask the user for their password. That's the first part of it. Next, after we ask them for that, we'll create a variable. We'll create a string variable. We'll name this string user input, right? Equals input dot next int. This will take the input from the user and then store inside of this variable. Oh, sorry, this should not be int, this should be line, because we're referring to this as a string. Okay, and so next what we're going to do is we're going to declare the password, the actual password. Okay, so because we have to have the guess of the user and the actual password to compare it to. Okay, and so there's an error. No problem. I'm gonna go through it right now, and then you can compare with yours afterwards. But if you're still having trouble, I can get onto a Zoom call afterwards to help you. Okay. Alright, so now we have the user input. We've got to create our actual password though. So let's say our string password, our password will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is not a good password. When you're creating a password, you should try to alter it. Use a mixture of letters and numbers. Alright, so now this is the main part. The idea here is that we have to compare, right? And so tell them that if it's correct, only if the password and user input are the same, right? And so we'll use an if statement for that. But before that, we'll create a while loop and say that while we'll create a condition. So while the while user input is not equal to, this is what we use to say not equal to. Remember how we use double equal sign for equals? Well, we use an exclamation mark in equal to say that something is not equal to it. So while the user input is not equal to the password, we'll continue to ask the user for their input, and we'll move this line here. And then we'll say system.out.print. We're going to keep telling them that if their password is not correct, then it'll keep asking them for their password. And then after asking them for their password, if it's incorrect, we're going to print out the password is incorrect. Okay, and so then once the user input is correct, well, once the user input is equal to the password, then what's going to happen is that this condition will no longer be met, and so then it will exit this loop. And so then once it exits the loop, the only way it can exit the loop is that if the answer is correct, right? So in that case, we will do this. We will tell them the password is correct. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll test it out right now. Oh, I get it, because we haven't declared the user input yet. So user input alright, and then we'll say this. Hello, please type in the password to use your computer. So if we just type in password, we'll say the password isn't correct, right? So I'll keep trying with random letters. Okay, that isn't correct. Let's try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, Okay. So I forgot to tell you guys one thing, and that's that the strings and integers are very different from one another, not just in like the data they hold, because strings hold words, right? Or not words, they hold like a string of characters, right? Well, ints hold in numbers. Well, in our case, the way they're stored is quite different too, because a string is stored in memory. It's it doesn't store it directly in memory, but it stores the location in memory, right? So when it's comparing, it's not actually comparing it correctly. So what we have to do is use the dot equals method here. And so we'll say if, I have to add another if statement here, if what's it, password dot equals the user input break. And so this break statement will allow us to exit this loop. Now let's try again. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, alright, so let's check with Angela. But my password is a string, not an integer. Oh, in that case, then you don't have to use the dot equals, alright? We can actually do this instead. Okay. Oh, okay, alright, I get it now. So we need to put this beforehand, or else it will just keep printing that out. So just do this, and then it'll give you the correct one. And then it'll give you, right? And so I changed the code a bit. So what you can do with a while loop is that you don't actually always have to use a variable in your condition. What you can say is that while true, and then what this does is that it makes the loop run forever. So unless this changes, say this turns to false, then the loop will keep going, right? And so the reason why the loop is able to stop in our over here in this loop is because we created this if statement. And so if this condition is met, then we break from this loop, and then we actually skip everything that's down here and then go all the way to line 23 where we print out if it's correct. So let's walk through the code step by step. So over here, we create the password which we want to compare the user input to. And then we actually declare the string user input, but leave it empty because they haven't given us their input yet. Afterwards, we take what they type here and then store it into this variable. And then we compare it to the password, and we'll say if the password dot equals the user input, well, then we don't have to continue asking them for the password, right? Because if the password is already the same, or like the user input is already the same as the password, that means that they have access to the computer. That means we can stop asking them. And then afterwards, we skip this part, right? This break statement right here is incredibly important because if we don't have it, then the code will just keep on going forever. And so once the password is correct, then this will break and it will skip this part here and then jump all the way here to tell us that the password is correct. Okay, Angela, in your situation, if your password is an integer, then what you want to do is that you'll instead create a password, a variable called, that will use as your password, and you'll do something like this, right? But then you don't have to use the dot equals method, although you can if you want to. You can just use the equals to compare, and then you can say that if the password equals user input, then break. So hopefully that solves your issue. But alright, if you guys don't have any more issues, then I'll move on to the next part. So once we've finished doing this password guesser, we'll move on to our next question. Or the next problem we'll solve with the while loop and for loop. And so we talked about how while loops are really good are good because you're able to continuously repeat what's inside of the loop until something tells it otherwise, right? And so we can use this for math questions, right? So we'll have a question like this. So there is this kid named Randy, right? And so Randy runs 10 kilometers forward every day, right? But at the end he runs 2 kilometers backwards. And so his destination is 30 kilometers away. So tell me how many days it takes for Randy to get to the destination. And so if you know the answer, type it in the chat. So Randy goes forward 10 kilometers, then goes backwards by 2 kilometers. His destination is 30 kilometers away from his start point. How many days will it take for him to get to his destination? Okay, so no, my password is a string, but even if I type the right password, it says it's wrong. Wrong. Okay. Let's go back. And so what I'll do right here is, so okay, so I'll show you how the while loop works again. So we have the while loop, right? And so above in the header, we want to tell it that while true, which basically means while forever. And then afterwards, we want to have an if statement. Right, so, okay. Can you type your code into the chat, Angela? I think that would be the easiest way. Okay, yeah, so how it works is that Randy goes forward 10 kilometers, then goes backwards by 2 kilometers each day, right? And so he goes forward by 10, then back by 2, then forward by 10, then back to 2, right? Okay, so we got some people saying 5 days, and some people saying 4 days. But I'll get to you guys later. I want to solve Angela's problem first. So can you type your code into the chat? So just copy and paste it in so I can see it. An if and else statement. Can't. Why can't you type in your code? Is it too long? It's too long. Okay, yeah, no problem. What I'll do right now is that I'll rewrite it for you, okay? And then you'll be able to, okay, I'll rewrite it for you. So I'll type it into the chat for you, and so I want you to copy this and try it. Oh, it's too long. All right. What I'll do is I'll copy just this part because this is the most important part. Yeah, it's not 5 days. Oh, it's still too long? Okay, I'll just send you this segment of it and then it'll work. Yeah, so Angela, just copy and paste this code in and it should work. Just make sure that the variables line up with what you have. Okay, if that's all good now, then what we'll do is that we'll start the question. So, first of all, we have to measure how far away Randy is, right? So we know that the destination is 30 kilometers away, right? So we can create a variable called destination and assign it the value of 30. Afterwards, we want to kind of create another variable, but this time this variable is going to measure basically how far away Andy is from the destination. And so to do that, we'll basically create a variable called um, we'll just create a variable called distance traveled, right? Because you have to travel 30 kilometers in order to get there. So we'll create our distance and declare it as 0 because you start out at 0 and then have to get to 30. Hey Angela, did it work? If it works, let me know. If it doesn't, also let me know, okay? Alright, so now that we have our distance and destination, we're going to create a while loop and say that while the distance is smaller than our destination, where we want to continue running or like continue traveling, right? We should also create a variable called days to measure how many days it takes. So we start at 0 days. And so that every single time, what's going to happen is our days will increment by 1. What? That was weird. Okay. Well, alright, so every single day, every single time, we will increment our days by 1. And so while the distance is smaller than destination, days is equal to days plus 1 because we haven't reached our destination, so we have to keep going. And then we'll say that our distance is equal to distance plus 10 because we're going forward 10 each day and then back 2. So then we'll say distance is equal to distance minus 2. And so once we finish this, we're going to print out days. Oh, I forgot to add a semicolon, so it won't work. Okay, and it gives us 4 days, right? Because on the first day, we start out at 0, and then we move up to 10 kilometers, but then we move back 2, so then we're at 8, right? Then on the second day, we go to 18 kilometers, but then move back 2 again, so then we're at 16, right? And then at 16, we go up 10 again to 26, then move back 2, so then we're at 24. And then at the 4th day, we finally make it to over 30 kilometers. So we actually overshoot the distance, but we're assuming that once he reaches there, he'll stop running. So it'll take us 3 days to get there. Or 4 days, sorry. Well, 4 days to hypothetically to pass, right? Because he won't actually get to the destination. He'll actually overshoot it by a bit. That was my problem. That was my fault in designing the question. But yeah, the answer is 4. But yeah, if you want to get exactly to exactly to that destination, then it'll be between 3 and 4. But uh yeah, he'll overshoot the destination 4. So that's one of the examples you can use to pack the gas. I can't find where to put one. Okay, Angela. Okay, what I'll do right now is I'll just show you this here, and so I want you to just like copy it, okay? Yeah, so just copy this code and then tell me if it works, okay? Oh, Bolu, yeah, 3.75 days, yeah. Yeah, that's the amount of time it would take for you to get there exactly, right? Yeah, so Angela, once you're done copying it down, just type in the chat. Yeah, so the reason why, I'm just gonna go back to this really quickly. The reason why I gave us 4 is because inside of the loop, it assumes that the day is not complete until he runs to and then goes forward 10 and then goes back to, which is why it didn't know that it couldn't tell, right? Because it's not comparing it after every single line. It's only comparing it after he's done all of these things once, right? So it's comparing it only after the distance is equal to only after you add 10 to the distance and subtract 2 from the distance, right? Afterwards, you compare it, but you're not comparing it actively. Okay, so I'll go back to the code for you, Angela. Yeah. This is just to give you the idea of how you could solve a problem using loops, right? Because if you have if you tell it, you could get it to return you the exact number or like the exact time it takes you to get there. To do that, you would have to actively check every single time, right? So once it's equal to 30, right? But we're adding it in increments of 10, so then there's no way we'd be able to have it check like that. It'll be able to stop once it's over the destination. So I think a better way to phrase this question would be how many days does it take to get past 30 kilometers? Yeah, so Angela, if you're finished copying the code, let me just type in the chat. Yeah, but other than that, I've pretty much gone through, well, yeah, I've gone through everything I wanted to show you guys today. So the for loop and the while loop. Um, that's all we're going to be going over today. I have another question for you guys too after this one. After Angela is done, I'll show you it. I don't see any new code. Oh no, it's this code right here. I want you to just copy down this code, alright? Yeah, and then see if it works. Actually, what I'll do is I'll send you the link to this into the chat, and then you can go over it. Let me just reload this. Okay, yeah, so just click open that link and you'll be able to see the code and copy and paste it into yours, and then you'll be able to run it, okay? So yeah, what I'll do right now is I'll just reiterate over what we did today so that we can tie it back all together. So yeah, for the most part, we just went over the basic for loop and the while loop, and we used the while loop to complete two questions. Um, I'm also going to show you something else you can also do with the for loop right now. So I'll just get rid of this. So I'm going to show you guys what you can do, what else you can do with the for loop. You can also make some cool designs too. Well, actually, I'll wait until Angela's done and then. Yeah, so Angela, are you done now? If you're done, just type in the chat, okay? So yeah, the for loop is really good for doing something a certain amount of times, right? So with the for loop, you have to declare a variable inside, and then create the condition that that has to comply with the loop. If it doesn't comply, then you exit the loop and then stop running it. So in this example, I showed you guys before, but you can like print out numbers, right? Or you can print out every second number by saying I is plus equal to 2. And then you can print out every second number that's smaller than 5, starting at 0. Okay, you're done. Does the code work? Yeah, and we're able to print out all the numbers under 0, right? So, okay, for homework, what I want you guys to do is I want you to write a program which will take the input from the user of an integer, right? So it'll ask the user for an integer, and then it'll print out all the even numbers from 0 to that integer, okay? So I'll just write it right here. So the goal of this week is to write a program that takes in an integer. I'll write it right here. Write a program that takes in an integer from the user and prints out all the numbers from all the even numbers, numbers smaller than the integer. Okay, so that's the goal for today or this week, okay? Alright. Okay, and so with that, that's going to be the end of the class. If you have any questions today, I'll open up a Zoom room for you guys to join so you can ask questions. But if not, then yeah, that's the end of the class. And I hope you guys have a good day. Thank you for coming to the lesson, and I hope you learned something today. If you didn't, I'm sorry, but if you and you have any questions or you want some more help, I'll be sticking around until 6:30 in the Zoom call, which I will start right now and post in the chat. Okay, the code works. That's good. Oh, darn it. Okay, so let me just end this meeting and I'll copy the invitation and then I'll send it into the chat. There. Yeah, you can go now. If you don't have any questions, yeah, you can leave. But if you do, you can stick around in the Zoom call. I'll be there in there if you guys have any questions. All right. Anyways, if no more questions, I'll end this live stream. Okay.